The association was also they were on this, and we've sort of been talking that this was inevitably going to get here.
Yeah, haven't heard from you guys in a while. Good to see you.
This topic is legit, and here we go. 65-game rule. They're calling for it to either be abolished or, at the very least, reformed so that you can have exceptions for serious injuries, which, of course, is the Cade Cunningham rule at this point, is how we're going to view it. We all know that the All-NBA team spot for him is in doubt. He only has 61 games played as of now. He's got the collapsed lung. I don't know that he's going to get the minimum number. And so, look, in order for them to go and reform this, you'd have to get back into some collective bargaining because they did agree to it 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Is that what we're looking at?
It'd be a shame because you don't want to see a lockout. You don't want to see other guys' seasons and careers jeopardized because of this. But it is definitely a topic of conversation. I'm glad, again, that they're getting involved in a situation like this because this is the first real example we've seen of a player getting burned by this rule. This rule was placed into this league for load management and making the game better. Cade Cunningham having a collapsed lung, that has nothing to do with the season he had and the success him and the Pistons have had. So there's got to be some sort of an exception or a gray area where you can override a certain situation of a player that knows it was not the right thing to happen. Everybody knows right now Cade Cunningham is probably a first-team All-NBA, at worst second, and he's a top 3, top 4 MVP candidate. So the fact that he's got a legit injury, that, by the way, pisses him off more than anybody else. You don't think this guy wants to play? Like, this is where this is a little gray to me, and I'm glad, again, the Players Association is stepping in because we need them at a time like this to kind of fix this because everyone knows it's the rule, everyone understood the rule, but everyone knows it's not fair in this exact example. So I'm glad they're speaking up. I'd hate for it to be a whole drawn-out, like, lockout.
Oh,
I can't imagine it would go on that long because I think everyone kind of sees the way that we see. But this is just really the first example that we have of this where it's going to screw a player.
It looks like it's gonna add up. You know, looking at the numbers, Wemby has to play the last 8 out of 10, and Jokic has to play the last 9 out of 10. And you know, there's no room for error. There's no room for injury. No room for suspensions. No room for nothing. You know, for two guys that we consider to be in this conversation just as much as Cade Cunningham. They're on a tightrope. So if you mess around and get one more of these guys in this conversation, or God forbid you get both of these guys in this conversation along with Cade Cunningham, you're gonna have to do something. Something is gonna have to be discussed after this season.
Yeah, there's a world that all 4 of those guys don't meet the requirement.
100%.
And when I think of this season, those are probably the first 4 names I would think of, and they don't qualify.
You know what I was thinking about on the drive in this morning? And I don't, it's obviously this is a regular season award or this is how it's given out. However, you know, some of these guys are going to go deep into the playoffs. That's going to be a lot more games added onto their total. And it kind of seems unfair that that's not taken into account as far as your performance, your ability to contribute to the workplace. Like that, I know that it's regular season, but this was made for anti-tanking, right? And this was because back in the day, we're giving awards out for dudes who played like 51 games. And I understand that that was not considered acceptable. Maybe it is time to go back to the drawing board and just tweak it.
Even the in-season tournament. Didn't SGA play in a couple of those games that didn't count?
There's one game in there that does not count for sure.
So but that doesn't go towards this?
I think rules are made to sort of go back and they evolve, and you have to sort of revisit and kind of change them a little bit. This isn't going to be so in their face, they're going to have to. Like the Cade thing is a big deal. And also it affects money.
I think it's great it's happening this early too with the rule, with this much star power in the conversation. Because again, let's say Jokic and SGA, they're gunning to meet their requirement, and then something worse happens on the way to that. Like now they're just going to be trying and reaching those numbers. No matter where you put that number, I understand it's going to be...
They're always going to be complaints.
It's going to be egregious no matter what, because if it's 60 games and guys are just going to play 60 games and then sit. If it's 55, like they're going to find ways to beat the system. I just feel like with this many examples of our star players that have had a huge impact on the success of this season, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I think a revisit.
Something else to consider really quick about,
I was going to piggyback off Beads right there.
Yeah, because like think about it. Yeah, some of these guys that we're talking about, right, Boog, like they're pretty much going to lock their seats in pretty soon here, right? And so we're going to start seeing the customary resting guys for games and this and that. So you're telling me if Detroit or San Antonio, they're locking their seed with 3 or 4 games left to go, you're forcing those guys out on the floor. Like now you're putting Wemby in a position to play in meaningless games as well. And that's the opposite side of what you want from tanking. But you also, if you're the Spurs, you're like, why am I putting him in risk of not being available for the playoffs for individual awards? So a lot of gray areas, a lot of
That's a
things.
great point. And think about, Lou, now you're taking away the whole advantage of getting that early lead and locking the number 1 seed. That's what you played all season for. Now you lock up the 1 seed, but I have to play to meet this requirement.
Right, and then I risk that I'm hurt for the playoffs, which is what we're all playing for in the first place.
And then miss the series and lose first round because I was so thirsty for the 65 games.
This is legit tough, Boogie.
And you also, you said something, Bees. You said something that it affects guys' money, but for me, it's a little deeper than that. It actually affects guys' legacies. So at the end of my career, me missing, 3-4 seasons because I didn't necessarily meet this requirement in my career, those 3-4 seasons I missed takes me from having, 4 All-NBA seasons to, 8 or 10 or whatever the case may be. I think that plays a huge part in this as well. When guys argue, who's the greatest of this generation, or you start comparing eras, the first thing everybody brings up is accolades. So
it's true.
It's true.
This rule now affects each guy's legacy. I think Cade has had one of the best seasons of his career, and now is cut short because he misses 4 games. You know what I mean? So I think that's also completely unfair. So for me, it's bigger than the money. The legacy also matters in this.
And think about like Hall of Fame, right? We always look at like right now this class. I'm looking at like Blake Griffin and Amari Stoudemire. I think, and I'm looking. The first thing I do is I go to their Wikipedia and I look at their accolades and their resume. And if this rule was implemented for those guys and it was 7-time All-NBA, maybe it would have been 3 if they had to play by these same rules. So like it's a huge discredit to the guys now because it is ruining their resumes, and for future like awards like the Hall of Fame, it is going to be much harder to get those type of accolades that these other guys didn't have to qualify for.
I mean, Mark, a tweak is coming. Something's going to change. And the quote that they used in the statement was that Cade has had a career-defining season, and no one can argue with that. And I think the league has to take a look.